continuation of work session, an item that the council has spent some time on now. A couple of months ago, at a work session, council looked at an iteration of stormwater rates, and we will have some more background on this, but I'm just going to give a quick intro. Trying to set stormwater rates that better balance the cost of the stormwater system across the users of the stormwater system. That was the original goal. Council has now given some feedback on rates, various models that we've had, and the feedback, the general trend has been that we want to be careful. We want to moderate some of the increases that we had originally suggested in our first model to our larger businesses, larger parcel businesses, because just because they're large parcel businesses doesn't mean that they're necessarily large economic businesses. So Jackie has gone back with our consultant team, and they have looked at the model. They've looked at some of the constraints that we have in the model, and we have another version, another series of rates to share that we think may be in line with the council's direction from the last meeting. And so with that, I'll ask Jackie to give a summary, kind of remind us of some of the plan that we've been working through. And there was one other thing. We just want to mention that the Water and Sewer Board has been kept apprised of council's direction and has seen these latest rates, and I think appreciates council's perspective and the general trend and some of that feedback that I just outlined, and they have also seen these rates that you're seeing tonight, as has one of your finance committee members. So with that, Jackie.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just as a reminder of what has been done for the storm drainage rate study and what we were hoping to get out of the process, they did develop a 5-year financial plan for us that is very user-friendly. It's really a good, useful tool for us to be able to input our own data going forward and really play with and modify things as we go forward. So that was a really nice main tangible piece of the study. They also developed the rate alternatives that we talked about, both to recover annual revenue requirements each year, as well as to improve customer class equity, were items that they were keeping in mind all the time in the process. Some of the key assumptions that they did build in during the rate study: for fund reserves, they had 90 days of operating and maintenance expense and 1 year of annual depreciation, which is a little bit higher. They were saying best practice is about 60 days of that O&M expense. And so as our conservative fund balance has historically been for the storm drainage fund, they wanted to honor that and continue that consistency for us. Any anticipated growth units that we have coming aboard, similar to our budget process, we've taken 75% of those units so that we're not building in 100% of the expected growth over this 5-year time frame either. And we also have revenue coverage of 120%, 1.2 times. So oftentimes debt covenants will require that we have 110% for making debt service payments and that nature. So that's even a little bit extra too. So some really important factors that were in place for the rate study for us to get the rates on the back end. Some of the findings that came out of the report was confirmation that we will need to consider or continue to have a 3% rate increase annually to fund necessary expense and keeping the adequate reserves that we just talked about. I don't think that's a shock. I think that's in our normal plan and in our 5-year plan, but they did confirm that we will need to continue to do that. Their annual plan updates, in the rate study, the annual plan will allow us to adjust our estimates, different capital needs, revenue requirements, and anything that we know. That was a nice finding, was just it was something helpful for us to be able to modify. And then the revised rate structure we'll talk about. Some of the constraints that came out of the rate study, first and foremost, was data availability. And I know we've talked about it before. The GIS data that the samples were taken off of for this study was 2013 pre-flood information. So clearly it was good data. It was identified as well as it could be at that point. but there was no impervious surface layer on top of that. It was not digitized into the data that we had. That was a huge lacking piece at this point. The identification of customers wasn't there in terms of splitting out various users for commercial or industrial, for instance. That's something that we manually would have had to have gone to all of the non-residential units and then thus assigned them whether they were industrial or commercial. That information wasn't available to us at this point. And then the other constraint is just always maintaining that equitable distribution of costs, wanting to make sure that people are paying their fair share is not a bad thing of this, but a constraint as, we were kind of pushing and pulling rates and seeing where we felt like was appropriate to land. You don't have to study these numbers. Just wanted to put this up here. This is just a 5-year snapshot from the rate study itself. What I want to highlight is total revenues you can see vary each year, mostly because of some of the state loan proceeds. So we have it phased the years that we expect to draw down from the state revolving fund loan to pay for the capital projects. Subsequently, on the total expense line there, about middle way, you'll see that number varies quite a bit as well, depending on when the timing of those capital projects is assumed to be completed. So we do have an annual surplus that also varies. Important part of this is our beginning balance, as you'll see in 2020, is about $1.4 million. That's our current level. Before we do anything else with rates, that's where we're sitting with our current long-range plans. It's well above the target reserves at the bottom of $388,000 for this current year. But even with the varying revenues and expenses each year, we're maintaining that surplus or the ending fund balance that is what we're accustomed to and what we've built that storm drainage fund for. So I think it's a very stable plan that we have built at that point with the factors included in. What that means in terms of rates, as Jim mentioned, we've looked at a few of these versions now and just wanted to give them all to you so that you can recall kind of where we've migrated from. The first column there is our current rate. Residential and manufactured units are $9.43 per dwelling unit, and then commercial and industrial is $14.55, and multifamily is charged per dwelling unit at $9.43 as well. That first proposed scenario one that we looked at did have that really high top tier 3 dollar amount, and as we discussed, that may or may not be equitable based on the types of businesses. Purely on their parcel size, that could be very hard for some businesses to swallow. We did go back to our consultants to obtain proposed scenario 2 that did help to balance a little bit of that information, and then we went back and had them do it again and really look at every piece. Can we break out industrial? Can we break out commercial? What can we do to make sure that we have the best rates we can with the data that we have currently? And they have come up with proposed scenario 3. And this is 2020 rates at the top, so it has been inflated for a 3% inflationary increase, similar to what we've done on the other enterprise funds. So all of that is done very similarly. So the current suggested rate is $9.74 per residential or manufactured home. The tier 1, which is the 0 to 14,000 square foot size, is $24.85. Tier 2, which would go up to 28,000 square foot parcels, is at $49.69. And then tier 3, which is our largest tier, anything over 28,000 square foot, is about $59.74. Again, so multifamily then is included in that same commercial industrial tier structure rather than being per dwelling unit, which will, I think, be a huge component of that equitable distribution of these costs for those areas there. And like I said, do include the inflated amounts for inflation. Yeah,
just
please.
Underscore the commercial rates that you see in scenario 3 are really the attempt at, reconciling a couple things Jackie talked about with data. The direction from the last council work session was that you would like to, again, moderate that impact on our largest properties, especially as we move into this new rate scheme, so that we're not shocking those companies, especially those that are industrial and might not have the same economic strength as some of the commercial properties. But since we weren't able to tease out, we don't have the data between what's actually considered commercial versus what's considered industrial at the parcel level. That's data that we can start collecting, and we will. But we thought that we would err on the side of lower increase, less increase at this time, and that's where we result in the $59.74, as opposed to where we had been, which was a higher rate for those larger parcels. So that's really I think the biggest message back based on your feedback is how those commercial rates look.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. I know we had checked in also at one point on neighboring city and what rates might look like from a comparison point of view. So I did pull some approximations from Greeley's 2020 rates. They do have their schedule available. In a single family home on 0.18 acres, which is about an 8,000 square foot parcel, is the average home size in Ashcroft Heights. Decided to pick a subdivision to test it out. They would pay about $9.52, so slightly less than what our proposed 2020 rate is there. And then was also able to pull a range for the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 sizes. So for a 10,000 square foot commercial property, they pay somewhere between $17.20 to $23, depending on whether it was low or high intensity. Similarly, for tier 2, depending on low or high intensity for 20,000 square foot parcel, they would pay somewhere between $34 and $46 in Greeley. And then their tier 3, we had taken one of their Walgreens stores as an example. It's much larger, 65,000 square foot parcel, high intensity. They're paying about $149. Best I can determine from their rate schedule that they have online. But I think that gave, and should give additional information that we're moving in the right direction, hopefully, and our rate study has taken a lot of these factors into consideration to recommend these rates.
Other data points, and I'll just kind of close here. That's our last slide, right?
Just next step.
Okay. Council had also talked about a goal of kind of moving toward that impervious surface model. I think also one that probably distinguishes more between the commercial and industrial. And I just as a reminder, we've talked about this as a step in that direction. Over the next couple of years, we'll be working on building that kind of data model. But this does hopefully help us to achieve some of those goals of balancing the cost for the system over all users a little bit more proportionally. That's all we have there.
Yeah, thanks. Questions, comments for staff?
I want to go back to the rates.
So Greeley does on their tiers, they do it between low and high intensity. So on the low end, they're going to pay $17.20, and if they're a high intensity, they're going to pay $23, correct? And there's not an in between, it's either this or that, right?
That's correct.
That is an impervious surface, right? It's high intensity.
Right.
It's
they
more
have like
impervious surface.
Right. And they have a coefficient. So for Greeley, you would take your square footage, find whatever your usage rate kind of category is, and then there's a coefficient that you multiply by your square footage that is tied to that impervious surface.
Which is a model that we are still hoping to move to.
Right.
It is.
Okay, so I just wanted to tell or say that I think that we're moving in the right direction, as you said, and I want to make sure that we keep moving and we don't stagnate and just say that this is it.
Right.
But so far, I think it's looking good.
Yeah, that's great.
Other comments? I agree. I think what you guys are doing right now is what we're asking for right now. I do agree we want to look forward and move in, the next direction, but what you guys have now looks really good. So thank you for all that.
Seems like most of the cities are moving towards a impervious model, so I think it's good for us to be looking at that too. moving towards it. It's just, we've got to gather the data.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the planning commission update. Turn it back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a couple planning commission policy direction questions for you tonight, and I'll just mention before turning it over to Randy that the staff report has 3 different items. Thanks to a conversation with council members prior to the meeting, we have been alerted that there was a ballot measure, and we did some quick research in 2010 that doesn't directly address one of the questions that we have for you tonight. Our question is about potentially incorporating the Board of Zoning Appeals duties into the planning commission duties. There was a 2010, I said it again, ballot measure that resolved that no one on the Board of Zoning Appeals could serve in any other, or the Planning Commission could serve in any other elected or appointed office. And the BZA is it is a charter required board, so we need to go back to the drawing board and make sure that we're reconciling with that and potentially other ballot measures that the community has already addressed. So all that to say, Randy's going to talk about 2 points of direction. The third piece regarding the Board of Zoning Appeals, we have some more work to do before bringing that back to you for direction. With that, Randy.
Good, and just to finish the story on that third piece, it's not anything that's urgent. There was 1 variance request during all of 2019, so that board, and that may be part of the problem, they meet very, very infrequently. So it's hard to keep them motivated and up to speed and interested. But at any rate, we'll set that one aside. What's prompted our discussion tonight with you is a recent resignation of Commissioner Julie Lowe. She's moved to Johnstown and has taken a position there. And so we'll miss her. She was a very consistent planning commissioner. So we do have a current vacancy. And then one of the things we've mentioned to council off and on over the past year is a perceived need that staff feels for an alternate member, an appointment of an alternate member to the board, to the commission, so that when there are fewer than 5 members present, that alternate can sit in and vote. The way this works in other jurisdictions is that member is at the dais and participating in the discussion, but only voting if there is a member missing. And just we didn't include it in your memo, but just a glance back at the last year. These are 2019 meetings. There were 12 meetings total during that time. There were one of those 12 that had all 5 members present. 5 of the meetings had 4 members present. 4 had 3 members present, which is still a quorum. And there were 2 with no quorum. So this recommendation would affect 11 of those 12 meetings. That alternate could have voted and been in either a 3rd, 4th, or 5th vote. That's it in a nutshell. We will need to work with the attorney's office and come up with some code language for you if you direct us to pursue this, to make sure that alternates are qualified and eligible under the code.
We also have an advertisement out for planning commission volunteers, and so we've set a deadline of February 7th for those applications, and we're also seeking tonight just direction on the process by which you'd like to fill those positions. Council has often asked the board or commission to have some interviews first among applicants, and then forward finalists to you. So that might be a process that you direct this evening. I know that's still a few days away. We have 1 application. I guess I might suggest that if you want to keep up that same practice where the planning commission has interviews and then they forward finalists to you, if we only have 1, you might ask us to bring it to you directly in the interest of time, but that's entirely your purview. So with that, we seek your direction on those two questions, alternates and process for this appointment.
Thank you. I'm absolutely for alternates. We got a lot of things going on in our city and we're growing. We're gonna need this planning commission to be able to vote on things and not have to wait a month or two until the next meeting. So I'm absolutely for alternates and I'm absolutely okay with them recommending recommendations coming to us. I would say maybe 3, pick their top. Hopefully we get 10 applicants. If we do, top 3 maybe. Absolutely okay if there's just one, just bringing it to us. Obviously, there's no need for an interview.
Well, I know when I got on the planning commission, the council wasn't even involved. And it was a different structure, I guess, because I had an interview, I guess, with with staff instead of the zoning commission, and then they just brought my recommendation to city council straight away. So I would be all for the planning commission making that choice and just giving us a recommendation.
I think that's what we were saying.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought that we were gonna be making the final.
No, I said planning commission pick their top 3.
Refer to you.
I did hear the council would make the decision.
Yeah, council, I think we would make the decision. We're the ones.
Because I was,
They're gonna be represent, bringing information to us. I
Yeah.
think we need the ones that make.
and I'm just saying
choice.
how before, I mean, there was just an appointment by council and the decision was already made coming to council. So if we want to be involved with it, it's
Yeah, I think planning commission should have the interviews. They're the ones that will be working on
Yeah.
them all the time.
Right.
yeah,
I'm saying, then bring us your top 3. Hopefully we get enough of those 3. Obviously, we have a lot of vacancies on a lot of our boards, so hopefully we're getting enough people that do apply for it.
so I have a question though. I mean, I guess I'll agree with that. But what's happening that we don't have enough interest in the commission to be able to attend meetings? Is it because it's so irregular? And my questioning would be, is if there's nothing on the schedule, why don't they just have regular meetings so that they can keep that on their schedule? And if there's nothing that they need to address, then maybe they have some education or updates instead.
Right.
So that they're still on a regular basis. I mean, these people are pretty important to us. And I think if they don't have regular meetings, that it just makes it seem like maybe they're not so important to us.
Yeah, I can address that. For the last year that I was here, they did have regular meetings. They met every month, with the exception of the month of August. We did not have an item for them then, and 3 of them were out of town. And so we, rather than bringing 2 of them in, we scrapped that August meeting. But there were 12 meetings total. 2 meetings in 1 month in an effort to get a quorum to bring you the Mission Springs variance request that which kind of overlaps. So they do meet. They're regularly scheduled every 4th Thursday of every month. We changed the December schedule to the 2nd Thursday for the holidays, and so it's on their calendar and works.
That practice was a change prior to about a year and a half ago. The practice was that if there were no planning cases on which they'd be making a decision, the commission wouldn't meet. I think based on some feedback from the commission and I think council's concurrence, we now do have meetings each month, and I know a couple of them this year have been more like work sessions where they didn't have planning decisions, but they were updated on issues and projects coming forward. So that is happening more now.
So maybe on those times that they don't have anything, maybe that can be an appropriate time to have a joint council planning commission meeting so that, they can still feel involved. My concern is I know that for city council, we have ordinance or regulations set in place that if we miss a certain amount of meetings in, a certain amount of time, that we are rightfully asked to leave the city council. Do we have something like that in place for the commission?
But it says excused absences, and so
Yes.
letting us know most of these were really through no fault of the members. They were travel obligation, work obligations, or illness. We don't have the sense at all that they are not taking this seriously or abusing their appointment or anything like that. It was, to the best of our knowledge, legitimate reasons for not making the
I mean,
meeting.
these are our neighbors, and we really value what they have to say and what they have, to add to the conversation. So I just want to make sure that they know that they have a very important job to do for us. And I'm in agreement with you. If we can get an alternative, that would be super fabulous. I like the way that you have it structured. And I just want to comment on the one thing that you didn't bring up, because we're going to look into it. I think it must have been an ordinance instead that was brought before city council, because it was something that I know that I did vote on.
Sure.
So sometime between 2016 and,
Oh, just recently.
yeah,
Okay.
2016, 2017.
I remember that as well.
We
Yeah,
voted on
I
it.
remember.
We were there and we voted on it, that they could sit on both, and it
Yeah.
could be combined. And I think Mr.
I
Cobb,
remember that.
I think he had it lined up in really good verbiage for us too, so that everything was on the legit and legal side.
Yeah, we'll
We'll go
definitely
back
do our
and look.
homework on that.
And I'll try to look too, because you know me, I write it all down.
But how are you,
Thank you.
if there's just one applicant, you okay with just bringing them down?
Oh, yeah.
Other comments, questions?
I think the alternates are important, because I know of 2 meetings last year that did not get to have a full quorum because we didn't have people. And part of the problem is with that, I saw from the other side of it, then we're pushing off possible people wanting to come in and build, do things, expand. And the people I do know that happened to, we're not angry or anything, but it was a little frustrating because one of the people had to fly out from California every single time. And so with not getting pushed off and pushed off and pushed off, and then it was brought in front of council, ultimately because we couldn't get the quorum, they couldn't get what they needed. I can't stress, I think it's very important to have some alternates, if not one, maybe 2. They would let us, just for the fact of, I don't know what was happening at that time, but it was a bit frustrating, a little bit, for the people that were wanting to get that passed.
Everyone has a timeline, they're invested, and so potentially even having 2 alternates is something we can consider.
Amanda?
No, just, we need to be able to get people in there that we can, enough people in there that we can have a quorum and get the work done. So I think alternates are definitely a good partial fix to it, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope we get a good group of applicants for it.
They're very important. I mean, they need to know that we're important.
They're very important part, yeah.
And I do like what Councilmember Spears mentioned, that if there's not a meeting, just assisting them with any information, some sort of class, just to help them with any needs that they need, and also which will also add value and let them know that hey, we're investing in you.
Yeah, we did that twice last year, and once again for their January meeting. The 2 last year were, as they started reviewing the extraction request, we brought in oil and gas information, what the regulations were, what the city regulates, and what the COGCC regulates. So it was really clear in their mind that they're dealing with the surface and not what happens below the surface. They felt that was important. And then early on in the year, I believe it was in March or April, brought in a person from DOLA and Dan Krob at that time, who basically just talked about public hearings and the process and what the role of planning commissioners are and that sort of thing. It was, again, about an hour and a half or so of just discussion about what their role is and answered questions about, what if this, what if that sort of thing. So.
I think it will also show more interest because people are coming into something and learning and really understanding it thoroughly. So,
Randy, are you heading up those meetings?
Well, 3 staff members, and our planning department basically presents everything similar to the cases they do here. I've attended all but one, I believe, at this point, and then Karen Sabin is the clerk to the commission, takes the minutes and fields the phone calls for members that aren't coming and that sort of thing. So there are at least 3 members of staff there. Pardon me?
Maybe we should start feeding them.
We have for longer meetings, yeah.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
Food for everybody.
Bribe, yeah.
Just one more, this is a big year for the planning commission because of the comprehensive plan process that is going to be underway here very soon. In fact, we are planning a joint meeting with the planning commission, city council for probably March, April timeframe, during which there will be some good discussion about the vision for the process and also kind of start that visioning for the future. And we'll have some planned joint sessions as we move through that process. But this is an important year to have an engaged planning commission. So I think these are all good steps.
I think just a couple of things. Obviously, I think having an alternate is advantageous, not only for voting, but when there is a vacancy, obviously that gives us some issues or go to. A couple of things I would be interested to know on the meetings where we didn't have a quorum, did people actually come and then we just simply didn't have a quorum and then the meeting was canceled, or was the meeting called previously?
The 2 that happened last year, it was very last minute that we heard that there wasn't a quorum. So we gathered, because the applicants were already in town and everything, we had the meeting in hopes that maybe whoever was sick felt better, but it didn't happen.
So I would just encourage that perhaps the excuse policy has a time limit on it. While I understand that emergencies happen, I think that it's really advantageous for something like that, whereby it just becomes problematic when you do have the meeting and then you've taken those steps and added costs and then the meeting can't occur. So I would just, while we all understand things happen, I think it's advantageous to have some parameters built around that. On the flip side, I think we as a city should probably figure out how to better either message and or encourage our residents to become involved. I see a general lack of involvement on some of these things that I think I hear from the community that they want to be involved. I just don't think people know how. And I don't know if it's just pushing more information, but I think over pushing is better at this point because, I'll see something on Facebook, but then I don't really see anything more, or I guess it just doesn't trigger yet. But I think I know when there's like a sign and it's on Facebook and I get an insert in the mail and all these things, I start to see it more. But I think not only messaging, but messaging why it's important, what's involved. Because I think the other thing is, I know being a working mom, before I got involved, my primary reason for not being involved was that I didn't think I could do it. I genuinely looked at it and went, no, there's no way I have time for that at all. And so I think if we could even have like stories of people and what they do, like I know Allie was a big one for me when I started, like, oh, well, she's here and she's got a family and work, and that was really beneficial as a mom to know that there was another working mother doing the same thing. So it gave me somebody to ask questions or whatever. I think that sort of thing is really advantageous. I know this is a little skewed, but I just think it's really important, particularly because we do have a big year with Planning Commission, to really encourage our residents and just voice that as much as we can.
Well,
Give it a
Amanda,
try. Oh, sorry.
off of that, I think that especially with some of these detailed commissions like the Planning Commission, I think a lot of people, and I know when I got on Planning Commission, I thought, well, I don't know about city planning. And, maybe it needs to be advertised too, that not only can you be a mom or a family person or a working person, but that's your place to go to learn about it and make the decisions that affect your community. And you don't have to be, a city planner to be able to be on that commission.
I think that's a great misconception of it all, that people feel like, okay, I'm not qualified.
Right.
I'm not able to be a part of that because I probably don't have the background or experience.
Or I don't know about water and sewer.
Exactly.
Or
But it's a place, like, again, going back to like the educational aspect of it, like providing that education, having an onboarding system. So someone comes in, let's get you caught up to speed, explain to you what this means. having some kind of video on Evan's TV stating, hey, let's be a part of this. This is how you can serve your community, and this is what it entails. This is a time commitment. You're a working mom.
And learn about it.
And learn.
You don't have to be,
To be physically engaged.
We've been talking about this for 7 years now that I've been on council. We always go back and we always come up with these same ideas. It's just people, if they want to be involved, yeah, we need to encourage them. But, a lot of people, like, they don't have the extra time or they don't want to put the time into it. And that's a lot of people I talk to. I'm like, why don't you I work all day. I want to come home, spend time with my family. I have all these other commitments. And they're like, a lot of them just don't have the time and they want to get involved. They say that.
Also, beside that, hey, they want some leadership skills and they don't know how to attain that. And this is an opportunity for them to do that.
I agree.
It's just, I think it depends on the approach and how you kind of pitch it as well. Because there's other people that would love to do it again, but just having more information would definitely assist them.
Well, in a lot of the paperwork, it says, would you like to serve on any other board or any other whatnot? And, people might not check that just for the fact, because it doesn't say we're going to educate you and you get to make these decisions. It just says, do you want to do this? And me, I'm like, yay, yes. I'm willing to learn something new, but some people, it can be overwhelming. So
I think the 7 of us that are like that are here.
Yes.
I agree.
So,
It's taught me a lot in the few months I've been here.
thank you, Randy.
Thanks.
And the nominations, the applications are still open, so if you know of anybody that might be interested or whatever, please do encourage them to apply. And we'll keep it open, and since we are going to go with the alternate approach, once we have that ordinance in place, we'll reopen the application process for the alternate as well. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Next item is council discussion. The only thing I had my monthly meeting with Commissioner Kirkmeyer, the county commissioner, and staff should be by Friday receiving our IGA for 23rd Avenue with them. So should have that one wrapped up.
Great.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, good job.
thank you.
We just have US 34 Coalition MPO meeting and then Highway 85 Coalition meetings all in the next couple weeks. So that's what's going on.
I don't have anything to say other than you guys probably notice that I speak up very loud when we're doing these meetings, and that's because I've watched our videos, and it's very hard to hear this meeting, and so when you're not talking very loud, it's not showing up. It's kind of mumbling. So if you guys have something to say, it might be nice to say it loudly and clearly.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I've listened to it, I hear it.
Anyone
On
else?
that note, I'll just whisper.
Unless you're sick.
Unless you're sick.
If I turn away from coffee.
Yeah.
No, but on that note, huge thanks to Jim and Jackie and Laura. Last week we had a finance committee meeting and I had influenza and I didn't even text you. I literally fell asleep and woke up to my phone ringing and went, oh my gosh, so thank you for your grace and thank you for the hard work. And I greatly appreciate it. So I'm very sorry.
We're glad you're here.
Not me at all, so.
Well, I think Mark has already talked to
Yes.
the staff
Already.
regarding this, so.
Yep. It's all taken care of.
Congratulations to everyone, all the 5 seats that were up. Very exciting. This is a great group. I think it's very cohesive, and I'm very excited that everyone's back on. So we get to continue working towards the goals and the priorities that we have. And so I think we're all in a great path, and we have a great group again. So great. Congrats.
Thanks, Ellie.
Yeah, exciting.
Jim, is this where I can talk about that one intersection?
Sure, of course.
I already heard about this, but there's something I was thinking, I don't know who to ask to look into or what you guys think about it, but at the intersection of 31st and 11th, where the Verge or the Grove, whatever they call it now is, I don't know about you all, but it can get pretty frustrating for me when it's busy because there's no left turn lane, and on, if I remember correctly, on either side, heading east or west. And one day I came home from Firestone, and it was about not quite 5, so I was heading west, and that line went all the way back down past the Family Dollar, almost to the new Come and Go down there. And I was wondering if like maybe a left turn lane and then the other lane be straight and right turn. It was just very frustrating because it's so, you can't turn unless the person across from you is turning. And you don't know with some people because they don't use their blinkers like they're supposed to. But then coming east on, for example, Friday nights, if my husband says, hey, how about you pick up something off 11th, and we're heading that way, it's kind of the same thing. The line just backs up to those storage units, and then you're sitting there because, you're trying to turn. I don't know who to ask or what you guys' thoughts are on that intersection, but it's, to me, I don't know what you guys think of the intersection, though. I mean, I've heard, yeah, that's what I think. I think we need a
That's why I
left
turn
turn lane.
right, and then I turn left, and then just go around it.
Process. Tammy asked me about this. I'm really glad to have these kinds of things come up because staff tries to accommodate lots of council requests that are on the kind of smaller side. The things can be handled. We try to take care of those as promptly and often as we can. But there are a lot of projects and ideas that I know council has that, of course, we're willing to accommodate those too. But some things that will take some investment or some time really would benefit from some council consensus that those are things that you'd like staff to work on. So this is not a major investment, but we would have to study the intersection, and we have a traffic engineering consultant who can do that. I don't think it would cost, probably more than a few $1,000s, and we could find that money. But I think this is, I'm probably calling more attention to it than I need to. But I would ask, in these cases, it's great to have council raise an idea and then just look for heads nodding. And if staff sees that that there is a majority of council, we'll be glad to build that into the work plan and try to work on it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I mean, I drive that quite all the time, and I thought the same thing as you brought up. My only thought about that was if you try to make it turn left only, and then you have a straight or a right, there's no parking. That would eliminate all of that parking for those people that live right there, and that might pose a challenge to it. Or change the light and make it, straight, and then an arrow would come on to allow it. So I would be in favor for it.
Things that we could figure out the best. We could just check the optimization of that intersection for traffic.
For it.
Design. All right, I see heads nodding.
And I appreciate your mentioning that because we had heard and have observed and been looking at the eastbound situation. The get bus that uses that often sits through a couple cycles, making that left turn. Hadn't heard about nor witnessed the westbound congestion.
Yeah, go there about
5 o'clock.
About 5 o'clock. Between 4:30 and 5:30. Yeah.
That would be faster to get back to my home property.
No.
I was wrong. I should have just turned down on Prairie View Drive.
Mark, I can tell you that when years ago when they decided to 4-lane 11th Avenue and eliminate all the parking, there was quite a bit of council discussion on it. I don't think anyone ever came in, and I'm sure there's a lot of discussion after the fact when it was done, but I don't recall anyone coming into city council and complaining directly to city council about their parking being taken away.
Oh, I'm not saying that there will be. My concern is those duplex houses that are right there should cross. They don't have driveways and they don't have an alleyway. So,
well,
I'm just saying, right? But I'm not saying that will happen. I was just concerned.
Well, I looked at it again today and I noticed that the right turn lane is offset from that, but to me, the street it needs to kind of be widened anyway. So it's something that probably has to be addressed. And when they did take away the parking on 11th Avenue, you will notice that a lot of the yards there have turned into a parking area because there is no place for them to go. And it's just one of those things of progress, I guess.
No, I agree.
So it is, what I'm trying to say, it is doable. if it has to, if it has to
Oh,
come
sure,
to that.
absolutely.
It's not a good popular decision to be making at
Right.
all.
Right.
But, and I expressed some concern. I'm glad to see that after some 45 years that the wheat patch is going to be getting a little business there, but I'm not sure what the access is going to be for that. So I'm a little concerned that it's going to generate maybe some more problems there. So, but I think we need to get a study done on it if we can, Randy. So.
Anyone else? Let's break for 15 minutes.